Hi, Bill.
Hi there. I'm just about ready on my side.
Okay, can you see the agenda up on the screen? Is it working?
Yes, it is. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dusty.
Thank you.
Well, it's 4:31. And let's see. We have enough people here to get going. So why don't we begin? Let's see, how about if we begin with homeowner comments?
I don't have anything in the chat either, Susan.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we just move forward then and let's see. Why don't we move forward to the next item, news updates from the board. Bill, do you want to bring up your issue? Or and any other updates from the board that you want to talk about?
Oh, let's see here. Fumble through my different notes and papers. One of the things, looking forward and thinking forward, and that like to see is the as proposals come from different committees, be it grounds or from management or elsewhere, that have reserve and financial implications, to get those in front of the finance committee, so at least the finance committee has an opportunity to see what is being proposed and advise the board relative to the, what the implications of these recommendations are, with respect to reserves and that. So what I had, I reached out to grounds committee and said, hey, grounds committee, have you got any stuff that's going to be coming forward? And which we have 4 proposals, 2 for tree work and 2 in landscaping. I'm saying, all right, this is good. Let's reach over and ask the finance committee to give us take a look at and advise relative to implications on reserves. And it's not a matter of evaluating the proposals. It's a matter of, okay, here's proposals that we have coming forward. What are the financial implications of it with respect to the reserves? So that's what we have, and I've forwarded 4 proposals, summaries, just as to what the numbers are, and that, so that finance committee could offer some suggestion. The tree proposals are a result of the walks. There's one for zone 3 and there's one for zone 4. And effectively, after talking with grounds, these are annual maintenance matters and things that we ought to be looking at. As to the other 2, the landscapes, the improvements, the item for $3,800 is a small project. It's actually a continuation of, you'll recall, a test, I think it was at 1427 Commons. And we did a small bit of work there. And it's just continuing on contiguous area next to it. The third, or the other landscape improvements is for that area on the east side of the tennis courts, where we had vegetation removed and and dealing with what I'll call the raw area there. So that's what those are for.
So I've sent those around, and does anybody have anything that they want to say about it?
Would it be easier for us if they put some more description in there, Bill, just as you explained to us? The first 2 anyway?
That makes great sense. And this is the first time we've done this. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
And I'd missed someplace, I guess, where they developed their levels A, B, C, and D for trees. Is that in their minutes?
I believe that you'll find that in the grounds committee minutes somewhere, but I think, is Christina online?
No.
Yes, I am.
Christina, could you respond to that question?
And the question was?
The levels A, B,
Oh,
A,
for
B,
the
C,
tree-
and D. Yeah.
Oh, this is for the tree work? Yes, we did implement that. Grove did implement it. And so it's been broken down into different levels. So one is for tree removal and stump grinding. That is obviously high priority. And then following that, we have priority level A, which is tree pruning. That is work that really needs to get done. Then we have a priority level B for tree pruning again. Again, that is something that should be done. And then priority level C is a low priority. So that's a low priority. It doesn't really need to get done, but it's a very small amount. So we just add that in.
Yeah, within the grounds committee, are these levels, there's some definition as to what they are, so that if I picked up a piece of paper, I'd be able to say, okay, this is what
yeah.
A, B, and C is.
This is for trees. This is
Yeah,
solely
for trees, yes.
The landscaping is separate. The priority level is separate for landscaping. This is for
No, this
trees.
is strictly for the trees.
So tying, Christine, trying to tie that together historically, if I understood correctly, level A would be the tree removal, stump grinding.
No, that's not actually level A. That is a separate.
That's a separate thing by itself.
By itself. We cannot actually say no to any of these for the tree removal and stump grinding, Don.
Okay, because you seem to jump from that to level B.
No, and
No.
then yeah, correct. And then it was priority level A, which is tree pruning. Then we have priority level B, again, tree pruning, and priority level C, tree pruning. So the removals and stump grinding is a separate.
Okay.
So,
The pruning.
Can I just, sorry to interject, Don. I just want to clarify here that it's not going to be our job to evaluate whether these proposals should be accepted or not, because that's something that is just between the grounds committee and the board. So I think what's of interest to us is really any kind of meaning these proposals have for the reserve budgets or allocations.
I understand that, but I also think that it would be good information for us to understand a little bit more about each level.
Okay, gotcha. Just wanted to make sure that that was really clear. Thanks, Don.
You know, the problem with us evaluating the impact on reserves is that, as opposed to the influence on a yearly budget, if you're talking about operating, you can look at operating and say, if you spend this money, you're going to blow your budget for this year. You're going to go over it, whatever. When you get into reserves, you're talking about a multi-year impact. So you can look at it, but if you don't have the software available or run it out for the 30 years, which we don't, it's very difficult to tell how much influence is that going to have. And secondarily, you need to know, is that going to have a reduced an effect of reducing an out year? You know, so let's say somebody comes in with a, grounds comes in with a $25,000 restoration proposal. That's going to affect the budget over a 30-year cycle. And secondarily, is that $25,000 restoration proposal going to reduce a $20,000 expenditure in 2 years out? So we're working with one hand tied behind us because we don't have, the only person who has that software is Browning. And this is going to come up again when we start talking about siding, because it's exactly the same problem when you try to figure out either an expenditure or a savings, because it affects, it's a long-term effect.
I
Will,
understand.
you're absolutely right with respect to that. And I think, where I was thinking is both, in the long term, but also within the cycle that we're dealing with, and with the reserve allocations, where we stand with regard to current allocations, and some of these things will carry into next year perhaps, depending on what the timing is when they're accomplished. You know, these are things that, you know, we can have some discussion and some insight. And I think the finance committee can provide some great insight to that.
You know, one thing that occurred to me that the grounds committee might just want to think about is that when they're proposing some of the things that they're proposing, like Will is saying, have strong implications for possibly saving money in the future. For example, maintenance costs or irrigation, water usage, things like that, that are really, really hard to estimate.
Or
And
in some
things like,
cases, just shifting the cost that was originally projected for next year into this year.
Yeah.
It's not even a savings, it's just
Well,
simply a shift.
You gotta be careful about borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
But we're not essentially talking about borrowing to pay. The point is that to understand the implication of anything on the reserve study, you got to plug it into the reserve study. I mean, you can say you're exceeding the estimates for this year. Anybody, you know, the board can do that. If you estimated you're going to spend $350,000 on a particular line, and you're already at $335,000, and they come in with a proposal, you can say, you know, you're going to go over your estimated expenditures for this year. And inevitably, if there isn't some offset, that's going to increase future years. But it isn't a 1-to-1 ratio at all.
Or the
But
hard
what's happened
decision
is
has
it's
to be
been going
made that-
on for year over year. It's been increasing every year substantially. And while I understand that there's things that need to be done, I think, you know, it also could be looked at a little bit differently in terms of risk. That's all.
Will, I'm sure you've heard me say we can't afford to do it all at once.
Well, that's true, but I mean, you know, the board's got to make that decision, obviously. I'm just saying that to provide them with some insight that they wouldn't already have by looking at the numbers, the only way you can really provide insight into the reserve is to run the reserves. And I don't have, neither I nor anybody on this committee right now has the ability to run the reserves until the end of the year when we sit down with Browning and plug in the new numbers.
Very valid points, everybody. Very valid points.
yeah, it would be really nice to even generate some kind of an approximation of what it, you know, what increases in allocations would do for the reserve study. Just something rough, but yeah.
Yeah, without the software, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. This is part of educating Bill, everybody. So,
But at least we should ask Browning to help us do that this year so that we don't continue to do it every year.
yeah, I think, you know, we can ask anything and we'll see where we go, but that's why we want to have the dialogue now and that, because it's good discussion and suggestion. Thank you.
Browning will plug in any numbers you give him.
You just have to give them
You just
to
have to
him.
give him the numbers. He'll plug them in.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it'll tell you what the result from that's going to be.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And thank you for the comments on the emails too. I read those and I appreciate them. Thank you very much.
Can I provide a little bit of context just on as it pertains to the tree proposals? Just because I'm not sure if the finance committee is aware that the breakdown that's being referenced to and what Bill provided, it wasn't something that the Grove always included in their proposals. That was actually a recommendation that made by the grounds committee that they include those priority levels in their proposals so that the board can make better decisions as it pertains to our finances. But at the end of the day, when it comes to trees, it's not something that you want to, cut cost on. Tree maintenance is very important because they're also a huge liability for the association if they're not maintained properly and regularly. It's expensive.
I don't think
We-
that anybody's saying,
Okay, I was just
it's not
providing some
important.
additional
Just- I'm
context,
saying.
just, of how committees work. This was a very good recommendation by the grounds committee that asked the Grove to start doing proposals in this manner so that the board can have that additional information to make those kind of difficult decisions as it pertains to our finances.
Mhm.
I
No,
think
this is
it's great.
good comment and good discussion. Thank you for bringing that point up, Dusty.
Mhm.
Because I think the grounds committee has been, active in trying to develop, working with Grove to develop some better recommendations and that for the board's consideration. So very good, thank you.
I'm thinking, just to kind of bring this discussion to complete close, although that was a good closing, Bill, but I'm just gonna have another close. That I think I'll add the cost of pre-walks to our running list of things that Browning needs to pay attention to. We've got the siding updates and painting and the tennis court stuff, and I'll just add the tree walks to that list. It's just something we need to discuss with him.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so now I'd like to, I don't think we really got a chance to talk about the version of the reserve tracker you sent around,
Yeah.
Bill, and I
No,
thought
Go ahead.
I'd just open the, for a little discussion first. I know I thought your additions were fine, but I was concerned about Dusty's ability to fill those things in. That I kind of feel like it's really great that she is able to add in the new invoices every week, but then to add things that, all the other kind of possible expenses in the future. I was wondering if maybe that was something that you wanted to keep up yourself, just as a kind of an elaboration on the reserve tracker that she sent around. But I mean, other people may have different ideas. I just really want to open it up for discussion.
Well, the intent was, and I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate the comments that I've already received relative to the first draft. And I will tell you, I think we're on to iteration number 4. I've had opportunity to incorporate other people's comments and spend time with Dusty and Andy, and we talked about it and got their suggestions and their concerns, of which I am fully open to looking at things. But the intent was to help us see not only where we are, what we've approved, A, what we've paid, B, what we still have to be paid, C, and then what do we got at the door? We'll take, for example, the 4 proposals that I have here. Those would be incorporated in here for recommended expenditures pending board approval. So these would be the things that would come into the tracker. And that, gives you then you can see a total of recommended, approved and recommended against the, allocation and the balance remaining. As to forecast future expenditures, that's one where I think, we might see something that we know that needs to be done, or we can anticipate, and that does maybe happen within this period or next period. Don't know. And exactly how that one comes together, Dusty and I and Andy talked about it. yeah, that's a little bit problematic, and that would be something that I could provide input to, as well as management and other resources such as grounds committee or other, yeah, other sources. But the idea is, just kind of take us down the road, forecast where we expect to be at year end, and give us a little insight from that aspect. So,
I
Yeah,
actually like adding
but you,
some of
well,
those extra
you
things
have,
in.
oh, sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
Sorry,
I-
go ahead, Susan. I did have a comment for Bill.
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I actually like adding in some of those things. One of the things in particular that seems out there a lot that we forget about is the leaf cleanup at the end of the year, for example. We know we're gonna do it, and it's about, I don't know, I think it's 20,000 or 30,000. Usually one payment goes into next year, but it's a good thing to have in a forecast because it's, as we're looking at things, we kind of forget about it.
exactly, and that's the thing
That's an
that
that's an
I think
operational
about.
budget though, isn't it? It's not in reserve.
Yeah, leaf cleanup, I believe, is charged through the reserves.
Yeah, I think it is.
Is it? I'd have to look back.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll double check it. This is,
Yeah.
this is the type of dialogue that, helps us all understand where things are at.
The only thing I would suggest is in doing the calculations, as opposed to the filling in the data, to do the calculations, you should keep them with what's been approved, what's been authorized, and what's been expended,
mhm.
not what has been proposed, because you haven't approved what's been proposed. You may or may not approve it. And so it's not really, it doesn't tell you where you are until you actually know whether you're going to approve it or not approve it. If you want to have the others in there as reminders, hey, this is pending and maybe something else is out there, there's something else out there that we expect to hit us. But once you start running it into your calculations, then
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Will.
yeah.
And that's why, put it up there and say, okay.
As long as they're information only, I think you're fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, assuming Dusty has the information.
yeah,
Well, and I guess that's what I was most concerned about. I mean, a lot of this seems, it's fine information, but it's, it's maybe of more interest to you or and Nina. Yeah, I mean, or other committee members, but as something that Dusty has to put together, I would like to keep that at like what is really critical. Like with the tree proposals, I could wait until whatever was approved by the board before I saw that on the reserve tracker, for example. I mean, it's good information and interesting, but I want to keep it as something that's really clear about what's in her scope and what she has direct access to and what needs to be in that reserve tracker, because it's already kind of a bear for her. But I mean, I'm speaking.
Well, as the reserve tracker, we've got, First Service, isn't this something that the First Service and their IT department could put together and you have it just another output from the information they've already got?
Oh, yeah, it's tricky, and Don, the information that Bill is proposing is something that they absolutely don't have, because it's kind of.
They don't even have the approved. They have they have what's been billed.
Yeah.
So it's got to come from here.
The whole thing?
No, not the whole thing, but what's already been expended is not the problem. It's the stuff that hasn't been expended that is more problematic.
My thought is Dusty would only have to do some of it, not the whole thing.
Don, that's exactly right. And Don, one of the things that Dusty and Andy and I have discussed is, okay, how can we get some of this information which we get a very detailed financial report. But, in some cases, we need to, for instance, on the reserve tracker, if we were able to extract that information out of those financials and pass it over to the reserve tracker, which is maintained in Excel spreadsheet, not ideal, but it's something that we can look at. Again, the idea here is to help us look forward. I appreciate everybody's comments, and I'll continue to work with Andy and Dusty and take your comments into consideration, and we'll see where this goes. As I say, it's a work in process. What we have today, is helps us, and if we can decide, look at and make improvement, help us look down the road at what's coming at us that we forget about, or maybe didn't anticipate. That would be good. So thank you for your thoughts.
And what we've got to date is much appreciated.
Thank
Believe
you.
me.
Okay, well, yeah, and Bill, I just want to say, I appreciate your updating us on, what you've talked about with Andy and Dusty, because what you decide about the reserve tracker does, have an impact on us and our ability to give you all good feedback on, whatever it is that is coming up. So thank you for keeping us updated, and hope you continue to do that.
Well, that's my intent. As you know, I'm open for good communication and suggestion. Thank you.
Great. Okay, now, how about, let's see. Dusty, I hate to ask you about this, but were you able to get together any information on current investments, any kind of just a little summary, or maybe just ask Carla to send us a little summary?
So Carla, Bill has expressed great interest in kind of learning more about where we are currently with our investment. I'm trying to put him in touch with Carla so they can get a more in-depth look into that. But I haven't reached out to her as of yet. I do want to schedule something with her because I've never met her, and I do need to kind of get to know, what she brings to the table as far as investments go. So that's in the works. But as far as updates currently, I don't have anything. I'm still trying to get in touch with her and figure out when we can meet and talk.
Great, yeah. Well, it shouldn't be any big deal to get a summary from her. She, can probably just press a button and pop it out. So if you just put that on your list of things you want to ask her when you finally get in touch with her, that'd be great. Okay. Yeah, she's really nice. You'll like her. All right, new business. June financials. Anybody have any comments, thoughts, anything they want to bring up about them? Dusty, is there anything that you want to say about the June financials?
No, just to get a better understanding if there's anything, because there's a lot included in the financials. If there's any questions that anybody has that can make it a little bit easier to kind of understand and read where to find what, I'm happy to get those answers for you and assist in any way that I can.
Sounds good.
Susan, you skipped over the siding and the painting and stuff and got the new business.
Oh, Don, I put those on there because those are issues that we want to bring up to Browning. But are you, and so I skipped over it, but it's always fun to hear the updates from Will. Should we just ask him maybe to give us updates on
Nina,
you?
Nina and I have both been involved in working on this for the last several weeks. And it's gotten even more complicated. in terms of Browning. As a side issue, there's a proposal with hard numbers regarding coordinating the restoration, the grounds restoration with the siding project. That's got hard numbers on it, and it makes infinite sense. But I'm not talking about the finances of it, because I don't know what the implications of those are going to be yet. But the idea that you don't go in and do a restoration and then do siding on the same building and kill half the plants you just put in and so on. So that's the board's got that information. The board's going to have to decide, whether they want to possibly move forward with that. But the other thing that and Browning's got to have those numbers and plug those in so that you see what the implications of that are going to be. Nina, it looks to me like we're running about 30%, safe to say about 30% of the siding is being replaced. Now that doesn't, none of the, with long-term siding with non-T111. So that means that the next time we go to do this project, there'll be about 30% less siding potentially to go bad. On the other hand,
Now, when you say that, Will, you're looking out 8 years or?
I'm looking
12
at
years?
8 year, and I frankly would recommend at this point that we go to 8-year cycles, even though I used to. There's this, the one saving on 8-year cycles is you get about a 1/3 saving on painting, because you have to coordinate your painting cycle with your siding cycle. And if you're doing 8 years, you're getting 2 more years out of your paint job. So there's a small savings there. Now, keep in mind, Browning ran these numbers for this cycle on a 6-year projection. And then at relatively the last, late in the cycle, the board decided to go out to 8. So if 30+% of the siding is not potentially subject to deterioration, but the trim, which constitutes 25% of the actual material we purchase, is still going to be subject. They think they're doing a better job on the trim, but every cycle they say we're doing a better job. So I don't know if it's really the case or not. But we do have a project manager who's watching them very closely. So let's say hopefully we get a little more out of the trim. We've got to agree on a number. The board's got to agree on a number that we want to use to figure this, to give to Browning to work into his formula. I'm inclined to go for something like 25%, just because we know it's over that. We know it's 30+%, but that doesn't allow anything for the trim. So
why would we go with 25 if we know the actuals to date are over 30%?
Because the trim, which constitutes a quarter of our expenditure on material and probably close to a quarter on labor, is not going to be long-lived. Only the siding is being upgraded, not the trim. The trim is still wood.
I thought we upgraded the trim also.
Well, we've done some upgrades, but it's not synthetic. It's still wood. And so it's still going to wear out. And so to be conservative, if we go with the siding numbers and then the trim, which constitutes a quarter of our cost, turns out to not be long-lived, we're gonna end up with projections that.
Okay, so let me catch up here a little bit and stuff. We're doing zones 3 and 4 this year, correct?
Yeah.
We're not doing all of Nepenthe this year.
No, it's a 3-year cycle, a 3-year
Okay.
project.
So a 3-year cycle, so the 30% can go forward into the next zone and the next zone.
No.
Which are the ones that we're dealing with now, is comparable to where we are with zones 3 and 4. The upcoming zones are comparable, so why wouldn't we at least apply the 30+% to those areas and then go
30%.
back to your 20% as we come back around to zone 3 and 4 again?
The 30% won't apply to anything in this cycle because it doesn't kick in until the next cycle. In other words, you replace 30% of the sheets of T111. Then 8 years out, when you go to do the next cycle, only
Hopefully.
70%, only 70% is subject to failure.
Understand?
So if 30%, then you go to 30% of 70%, then you go out. So, I mean, I actually ran it out using 25%. So this cycle is 100%.
But right now, what comes next year? What zones come next year and the year after that?
They're going to be exactly like what we're doing right now.
So
Because
those zones, if we're going forward, we ought to be allowing 30 or 30+% for those zones next year and the year after.
well, no, because they won't have the new product on them. You don't get the savings until you put the product on and leave it there for 8
Well,
years.
I'm talking about the expenses on the reserve expenditures for 2024 and 2025.
Well, I think that, the amount, that amount is going to depend on the project proposals. And I think they're doing a lot different, much more.
They are, but we will get no savings out of this cycle.
I
Understand?
think Don is
I'm
talking
not
about.
talking 20 years out. I'm talking next year and the year after and trying to
I
manage
understand.
I'm trying to manage
Yeah.
the reserve budget for the next 2 years.
We understand that. Yeah, I think what Will is talking about is the implications for the future, down the road, not so
Because
much
it's-
just for this time around.
Because it's a 30-year project, if you have savings 8 years out and 16 years out and 24 years out, it affects your cost of your contribution to the reserves next year, because the reserves you're contributing now are projected out over 30 years.
Yes,
So-
I understand that. You're dealing with two different things here. One is the
That's
long-term
right.
reserve budget, and
That's
then
right.
the short-term expenditures that are part of that reserve budget.
Right, and what we know, the cost of this cycle, the cost of this first phase ran 1.8 times the bid. Now, Browning was closer to the actual cost, but it ran over Browning's numbers also. We're going to have a much more accurate estimate on phase 2, because they did a much more thorough job of looking for damage. So by the time, the point of all this is, we need to sit down with Browning ASAP.
Agreed?
We need to give Browning the hard numbers on the restoration project. We need to give Browning an estimate. We need to come up with a number estimate, whether it's 25%, 20%, 28%, whatever percent. But again, if you use 25%, let me just show you what happens. 8 years from now, you cut your siding costs down to only 88% of what they should have been. In 16 years, you're down to 78%. In 24 years, you're down to 69%. So you got to do, it's like the reverse of putting money in the bank in a compound interest loan, account. It builds on itself. In this case, it subtracts from itself. Each time you have fewer and fewer and fewer. So,
And that's just estimating at 25% this year. Not to mention in 8 years, we might get.
Yeah, it might be
Yeah.
more, but we're just assuming it's linear because we don't have any better information.
Yeah, we might as
Any
well.
better way of
But,
estimating.
but don't we have better information because of the work you and Nina did and counting?
Well, that's where we
Right.
came up, that's where we're coming up with these numbers. That's what I said. It's slightly over 30% of the sheets of T111 have been replaced. Not with, what is it? I'm
So our
trying,
budget,
not
so
Smart
our,
Shot, we're using
Duratemp, yeah.
Duratemp this time, so 30% of our siding is now Duratemp in the first phase.
it's, okay,
So Will, do we need to make a recommendation to the board to use 25% as an approximate?
I don't know, I'll ask Nina her opinion, but I would stick with 25% just because I want to hedge against that trim. I don't want to overstate it and then be surprised. But I clearly,
You
it's
mean-
over 25% of the sheets we're replacing, but because of the trim, we can't take 100%. We can't assume 100% because the substantial amount of the cost we're paying is to replace trim.
What's your thought, Nina?
Well, I have mixed emotions about this. I understand if we want to knock it down 5%, that actually takes us to about 27.5 or 28%. But if you don't use the real numbers you have, then you're estimating your estimates. It's already an estimate because we can't predict exactly how many sheets and half sheets. I mean, we can count the full sheets, but the half sheets are harder that are already on there. So I'm just saying it's an estimate already. And so you're estimating an estimate. And I guess that's why it would be good to have one sound number in there that we know it's 30% now.
Yeah, but how do we account for the,
Yeah, no,
But
that's
1/4
what
of
I'm
the
saying.
cost.
If you drop down 5% to account for the trim, you're probably gonna be there because it's a 4-year cycle. Or an 8-year cycle, it's still really about 2.5% over that time for the trim, but
yeah, 25% of the material cost is trim.
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, and trim actually is fairly labor intensive.
But
It's
25% over 5, over those 8 years,
so whatever number we come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal, again, I would stick with 25 to be on the very conservative side. But whatever number we come up with and recommend to the board, we need to sit down with Browning. Browning needs to number one, he needs to plug in the real cost of what we're doing as opposed to the estimate, his projections. Because that's going to kick his projections up, his next cycle. Number two, we need to tell him to do it on an 8-year cycle, not a 6-year cycle. That's going to change things. Number three, we need to tell him to work out a formula to reduce this thing by whatever, 25 or 30% each time. And of course, that's going to be a decreasing percentage because each time you reduce the number of sheets to be reduced, it reduces it again. And then to plug in the information from the projected restoration and all of that into his computer and come back and say, okay, these are the implications. If you do this and any other major changes, I don't know if there's any other major change, but if you do this, your assessment next year is going to be X and or your contribution to the reserves. Your contribution to the reserves the following year. And once he has that first year, he can run out all the other years. So you can see exactly what the effect, the projected effect is going to be. And we need to get him on that as soon as we possibly can. And I don't think it's just something we can send him. I think we're going to have to sit down and explain to him what we're doing about the T111 and the Duratemp and so on.
Well, I mean, I think that the board has a meeting with Browning scheduled, soonish. Certainly before our next finance committee meeting. I wonder if we should just
We
make a
do.
recommendation.
We do have 2 meetings set with Browning for August. One at the beginning of the month, and of course, he's going to be joining the finance committee during their August 24th meeting. So he will be available
Yeah.
on this Zoom during our next meeting.
I-
The meeting with the board, I have to reach out to the board and see what kind of information, if they want me to invite guests, for example, if they wanted me to invite you, Will, to represent all this information that's being, formed, they have to give me some direction on that. So I will be checking with them to see what kind of information they need me to compile for their meeting with Browning.
Is
Yeah,
it
I would suggest that-
is it possible that we all meet together in person with Browning? I think it's a much more open exchange of ideas and information to, be able to look across the table and say, hey, these
Right.
are our concerns.
Well, they're going to be meeting in person with the board. He is going to be meeting in person with the board in August. I did get him to commit to joining us via Zoom, I guess, as he's done in the past. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
He's done that in the
Our
past.
meeting is on Zoom, so
Okay.
he'll be meeting with us on Zoom.
I would suggest Browning needs this information sooner rather than later.
Right, and I believe that's the intent when he meets with the board, is
Yeah,
to
and-
present
and
this
it's-
information to Browning.
It's got to be structured in such a way it can be explained to him all the things that are coming
Mm.
down the pipe, because these are really major adjustments to his model.
Right.
Yeah,
I think maybe he might be the one to suggest whether we drop down 5% or what the percentage would be, because he has the visibility to see it out years after with his formula.
We can just give him the information. We're replacing roughly 31% of the sheets,
Yeah.
but we're not changing the siding. The siding constitutes about 25% of
Yeah.
our.
Yeah,
our
yeah, he
material
might be
cost.
able to tell us what he thinks is the best
Yeah.
number.
He's gonna have to make some adjustments.
Well,
I agree. I think that sounds like a good idea. He may have some place to put in the trim that's different from the siding, for example, so that.
Well, in the past, he's done an estimate based on past experience
Hmm,
to what a siding job, but clearly his numbers were low this time. So that's the other thing he's gonna have to do, is he's gonna have to adjust his numbers based upon what it actually cost us this time and what what looks like the bids are gonna be for next time.
Well, does anybody want to make a motion to make a recommendation to the board to tell them any particular things? Shall I?
I would move that we recommend the board that finance provide a presentation to Browning on the implications of the siding and painting project. And the board's gonna have to decide whether they want to tell Browning to do an 8-year or a 6-year cycle. So Bill can deal with that. But he should be told, because he'll do a 6 if you don't tell him to do an 8.
He likes doing more.
Well, I think the board would welcome that recommendation.
So I'm recommending that the finance committee present to Browning the implications of the painting and siding project for the reserves. Is that how you want to say it? Okay,
Yeah, the change, well, yeah, the information developed from the painting and siding project.
information.
is there a motion on the floor here?
From Will, yeah,
I made a motion.
I second it.
okay. Anybody opposed? Okay. All right.
And Bill, in the meantime, I updated Will with a spreadsheet today. I can send you the copy of it, or Will can. If you want it.
Oh,
Or
okay.
anybody, it doesn't have to just be,
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to do with it. I mean, happy to share.
Yeah, I could append it to the minutes if you want, if, unless it says, I mean, it feels like finance committee stuff.
It's up to everybody else if they want to have copies and.
You're gonna append it to the minutes if you, Nina, you gonna send it to her or you want me to?
I have the one that I made, one update on, Will, so I'll send it to her.
All right, that's good.
Okay.
All right, excellent.
I had a wrong date on it, so I want to make sure that she got that one.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. I don't see anything else really on the update list that we need to talk about. Do you? So is it just down to reserve tracker? Anybody have any comments? Thanks to Andy for making those updates, Dusty.
And she'll be back on the 26th. So after that, we'll start meeting about trying to implement some of these recommendations into the tracker and go from there.
Okay.
Thank you for updating it.
No, no problem.
Helpful.
Quick question, is the committee going to be making any recommendations as it pertains to the tennis court resurfacing and making any changes there for Browning?
Yes, but I think, haven't we already said something about that, or how? I mean, that's a great question, Dusty. I'm just wondering, I mean, I think we've said a couple of times what we were recommending that the board take that to Browning.
Okay.
Um,
So
But
no
if it-
new information. I know that the big items are the siding and the painting, but there's no new information or new ideas or updates that need to be shared with Browning as it pertains to the tennis courts.
I think they're in that report that Christina George submitted.
Okay.
And then, you know, it was really clear from that report that we needed to make some adjustments to the reserve study. What do you think, team? Do you think we should put something in that presentation that we're putting together for Browning on the tennis court stuff too?
I don't think it's critical because he's gonna, if he's given that information, he'll put it into his study. The reason this other needs to go to him, I think earlier, is because he actually has to change the way he calculates.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, you know, the board actually remembers to do that, but I think they will. You know, it should be on their list too.
Well, I assume Dusty's got a list of things, or somebody's feeding her a list from the board of topics. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a workbook that I have to update
Yeah.
for Browning.
That's what I thought. So
Yeah.
I assume that's in there.
Yes.
Yeah, that looked really fun. Super fun to do.
It
So,
is.
okay, well, that's all we've got. Anybody have anything else? Any homeowner comments? I'm not hearing anything. Well, let's check in about the next meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for August. I think it's the 28th. Yes, it's the 28th. And that's when Browning is going to come. Also, is that good for everybody?
Yeah,
Nina,
Yes.
Don, good, okay. All right. Okay, well, with that settled, I'm gonna move that we adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Great discussion today.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, everybody.